The Evangelical Lutheran Church in America is a mainline Protestant Lutheran church headquartered in Chicago, Illinois. The ELCA was officially formed on January 1, 1988, by the merging of three Lutheran church bodies. As of 2019, it has approximately 3.3 million baptized members in 8,972 congregations. In 2015, Pew Research estimated that 1.4% of the U.S. population self-identifies with the ELCA. It is the seventh largest Christian denomination by reported membership, and the largest Lutheran denomination in the United States. The next two largest Lutheran denominations are the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. There are also many smaller Lutheran church bodies in the United States, some of which were formed by dissidents to the major 1988 merger. The ELCA belongs to the World Council of Churches, the National Council of Churches of Christ in the USA, and the Lutheran World Federation. The ELCA is in full communion with the Episcopal Church, Moravian Church, Presbyterian Church, Reformed Church in America, United Church of Christ, and the United Methodist Church. Historically, various Lutheran churches in the United States formed out of association of congregations formed related to national immigration waves. For instance, members of the Lutheran Church in America, with headquarters in Minneapolis, Minnesota, was influenced by descendants of the waves of Scandinavian and German immigration to the Midwest in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The Association of Evangelical Lutheran Churches was made up of many congregations through the lower Midwest. Over time, the national or ethnic identification by certain church associations lessened as descendants became more assimilated into general American society. Members across organizations began to have more in common as areas of the country urbanized and more people made their livings in suburbs and cities, rather than in rural farming areas. The ELC and ELCA were already the result of earlier mergers among associated congregations once related to ethnic immigrant groups. In 1970, a survey by Stroman et al. Found that 79% of Lutheran Church in America clergy, 62% of American Lutheran Church clergy, and 58% of Lutheran Church Missouri Synod clergy surveyed agreed that a merger of all Lutheran groups in the United States into one organization is desirable. Disagreements among various congregations in the 1970s resulted in many leaving the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod after 1975, as it became dominated by theological and social conservatives. These dissident churches formed the Association of Evangelical Lutheran Churches. Following several years of discussions, the ELCA, ALC, and AELC formally agreed in 1982 to unite. Implementing this agreement took longer. The new Evangelical Lutheran Church of America was effective on January 1, 1988, creating the largest Lutheran church body in the United States. The ALC and ALCA had been formed by previous mergers. In 1960, the American Lutheran Church was formed as a merger of the earlier ALC of 1930. Largely members of German heritage, the United Evangelical Lutheran Church joined 3 years later in 1963. The ALC brought approximately 2.25 million members into the new ELCA. It was the most theologically conservative of the forming bodies, having a heritage of old Lutheran theology. It had been in fellowship for a decade with the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod and officially held to biblical inerrancy in its constitution. It seldom enforced that stance by means of heresy trials or other doctrinal discipline. Its geographic center was in the upper Midwest, especially Minnesota. Its headquarters and publisher were based on South 5th Street in Minneapolis, and one of its several seminaries was located in neighboring St. Paul. Its denominational magazine was the Lutheran Standard, published in Minneapolis. Some congregations in the ALC chose not to join the 1988 merger and instead formed the American Association of Lutheran Churches. The Lutheran Church in America had been created in 1962 by a merger among the United Lutheran Church in America, Augustana Evangelical Lutheran Church, of Swedish ethnicity with some dating to the colonial era. The Finnish Evangelical Lutheran Church of America, and American Evangelical Lutheran Church, made up of ethnic Danish families. The LCA was the slightly larger partner and brought approximately 2.85 million members into the new ELCA. Their administrative offices were in the Church House, a former townhouse mansion on Madison Avenue in New York City. Its publishing house, Fortress Press, was on Queen Lane in northwest Philadelphia, and produced the church magazine, The Lutheran. Its demographic focus was on the East Coast, centered on Pennsylvania. It also had large numbers in the Midwest and some presence in the southern Atlantic states. There are notable exceptions, but LCA background churches tend to emphasize liturgical expression more than